Good afternoon and welcome to the Board of Directors agenda meeting for June the 14th, 2022. This is our opportunity to review the agenda for our formal board meeting that will be held on June 21st. We have three modifications for today's agenda. Item M1 is a resolution to state the primary intended uses of a portion of the second tranche to the City of Little Rock, sponsored by City Director Doris Wright. Item M2 is a resolution to authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute a special warranty deed conveying real property located on Fraser Pike owned by the Little Rock Port Authority. Item M3 is a resolution to amend Resolution 15554 to execute any documents necessary to amend the conveyance of approximately 289 acres of property located at the Little Rock Port Authority.
Mayor, there'll be M4. It's at each of you all's desk. It's a resolution setting a public hearing for an abandonment between East 7th and East 8th, and the city attorney has reviewed it and is supportive of adding this. And it says to the July 5th agenda, but we've had some discussion. There's some other public hearings to set the date, and I would like to recommend that we not meet on July 5th due to the holiday, and just have a board meeting on the 12th at 6, and then a short agenda meeting after that.
I do concur, and we'll set that meeting for those dates. We'll now proceed to Director Wright.
Mayor, I make the motion that M1 be added to the resolution. As I understand, we need a supermajority vote to add it.
Second.
Mayor, this is
You
not
can't
a
do that.
meeting to vote.
You can't actually make that motion in an agenda meeting because it's not an official meeting.
So we can't add this to the agenda?
Not here, you can discuss it. You would have to vote to add it to the agenda next Tuesday.
Okay, so why is it here then?
Because you asked that it be on here so people can discuss, and this is a meeting at which you discuss that.
Okay. Do we do the discussion now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, my colleagues, I made some modifications to what we had been presented by the city manager and the mayor. I wanted some additional funding for the senior center, which we had made promises to our seniors, and they are expecting a designated center, so I felt we needed some additional monies. I also wanted an allocation for parks to focus on the West Central ball fields. I've been trying to get that done for a number of years and had been unable to. So with this tranche of funds, I felt this was an opportunity to do so. And so the changes that you see on the item, this resolution, are in that regard. Also, too, I believe, we added some additional monies to for the downtown partnership in order to get a study done for them. They had, I believe you all received the letter from Gabe Hallstrom where they were asking for some help. Our facilities down there are aging and they really need to be updated. That is our premier entrance into our city for that visitors see. So we really need to make sure that we update that while we have the resources to do so. So that is in a nutshell. Oh, and also the fire. You know, we wanted to make sure that we had enough for our fire trucks. I've been explaining in my public meetings that I've been having that it takes 2 years to get one of these fire trucks in. So what we have now is going to be 2 years older by the time we get our millage passed and get the resources in. So if we got some additional funds here, that will aid us in getting our fleet updated so that we're not so far behind the curve there. If I've missed anything, I invite my colleagues to weigh in.
Excuse me.
Director
Wright, it was actually.
Director
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
sorry.
not raising my hand. Sorry.
Because we got Director Wyrick who had her hand up before you. Director Wright, are you finished? Director Wright?
Yes, those were, I wanted us to have a discussion. If we, anybody else wants to add anything to that, if they have any questions, let me know.
Yes, ma'am. Director Wyrick?
Thank you, Mayor. Director Wright, thank you for these changes that you brought up. I actually saw the list last night. we've been going around to the millage meetings, and there's more questions and more concerns about infrastructure, both streets and drainage. And this public works capital needs, I don't think that has anything to do with streets and drainage. Am I correct about that?
To my knowledge, it does not. It's something that they need to take care of, I believe, at our, one of the, at the, what is
At the landfill.
landfill. That's, couldn't find the word.
That's kind of what I understood. I would like to see us, and I know we have funded some drainage projects on the first tranche. We did Yorkwood and Swaggerty Branch, I think, and maybe some others. I know I've got an area in Metacliff Brookwood. There's about 3 or 4 homes that they flood. There's been a number of times they've had to replace their carpet and flooring and things like that. I've had Public Works go out and look at it. And it's the infrastructure is not correct to take care of it's on a hill. It just flows right down into Heineman Park. And if you've ever been to Heineman when it's a high rain event, it floods. So, and I know in your area, we heard last week about that. So I would like to add some money for infrastructure in regards to drainage, to take care of some of the locations that are chronic flood locations. I know we took care of one in Metacliff Brookwood. It was identified before our sales tax issue that we approved, and it just got funded and completed last year. And it was a flooding issue all that time. And so I know there's chronic places around the city that we need to fund that. And hopefully the millage will take care of some of it, but that's yet to pass. And this is money that we have in our hands right now. So I agree with the things that you have in here. I would just like to add some additional money for particularly drainage issues across the city that we have.
Well, you know, we have the additional $6 million that has not been allocated, and I was hoping that we could utilize some of those funds to address the issue at 3013 Walker that you heard about at our meeting on June 8th. I sent Mr. Moore a recommendation as to how I think we can address that. I have not gotten a cost analysis from him, and but I could see us adding some additional monies to the from the unallocated amount to this, what we have here, to address some of our drainage issues, because the issue that is going on at 3013 Walker is similar to what you're talking about. She's been flooded out, insurance canceled. This goes on and on. Every time it rains, she's putting out sandbags, and it's really a horrendous situation. And I think you saw some of the pictures she was showing.
I did see him. That's Ward 6. And I know we have some of the same things in Ward 7. Stagecoach Road, it floods. And I know we actually bought a piece of property there because we could not rectify the damage that flows through there. We've got a business that's there. In fact, they got a sustainability award from the city because of the work that they're doing there, and the street that goes into his business floods, and it gets up into his business. And so, I mean, that's just a couple of examples, and I know we've got some chronic issues across the city, and I just feel like with this money, we need to try to address those.
We can add additional monies if you all are agreeable to that. As you see, it takes a supermajority vote to get this through, and I would definitely like to see some of these issues taken care of. And I was thinking of the unallocated amounts that we have, that I think is over $6 million that hasn't been allocated, and I would love to see at least $1 million of that unallocated go for this.
Well, $1 million for some of these is It won't hardly take care of them. I can assure you that it will take a substantial amount of money to take care of some of the things that you and I know about are going to happen. So that's just my concern with it. I agree with what's on the list, but I would like to see us, do something with the drainage. We've just not addressed it through the years. We've tried to take care of the streets and a little bit of drainage, but it's a problem.
Well, with the 3013 Walker, I've been assured by Public Works that there is no easy solution. I don't think that they even have a solution. What we were asking to be done, they're telling us that it cannot be done. And I forwarded the city manager something that I saw on the news about the city of Fort Smith, and hoping that he would take a look at how they addressed it, and hopefully that would give us some avenue to pursue. But right now, everything I'm hearing from Public Works, they cannot correct that problem without creating a problem further down on the homes that exist down the street from there.
Well, I'm just saying, that's in Ward 6, and it is a major problem. I saw the pictures. I feel the pain that the individuals along there, every time it rains, they worry, is it gonna get in my house?
Well, it gets in her house every time it rains, so the others are just, it's an if thing with them, but hers is major.
I'm wondering if this gets on the agenda to pass, if we could start looking at the remaining dollars in the tranche for the chronic locations that we have out there, and start trying to look at some sort of allocation for those areas. And I'm thinking it'd be the most serious problems is what I'm hoping that we can address. That's my concerns with it. Thank you.
Director, both Director Wyrick and Director Wright, I just want to reiterate with the members of the board. As you know, the city manager and myself did propose a proposal for you all to take some, give us feedback and questions. We shared that we would bring it back before the board. So just want to share that's not an unallocated amount, because we have not brought back the staff recommendations that, after listening to the members of the city board, I guess now a couple weeks ago. So at this point, everything's unallocated because it has not been approved by the board. So everything's still at zero. It's not, and the reason why is because we've gone through this process like we did last time, really listening, and clearly we all understand there are a lot of needs, and all we have is $18 million. So we're not going to meet every need with $18 million. And so, but what we strive to do, and the reason why you haven't seen a final proposal that has staff recommendations, and the reason why we say staff recommendations, because staff are looking into potential cost estimates to understand. We can easily say we'll put X dollar here, but at the end of the day, when we go to bidding, if the bid is more than the X dollar, all we have is the X dollar, and then we may not be able to fulfill something. And so that's the reason why staff has been hesitant to bring back another proposal for consideration, because we want you to have as much accurate information, clearly understanding that construction costs and things of that nature, that kind of varies, but we want to have a really good estimate before everyone. And you're right, we firmly believe drainage has to be an issue. We agree on 3013 Walker, but there's in addition to that, there are other areas, and so there's a possibility that staff has been looking into our various drainage funds and what we can do with the allotted one-time money. And so that's why you haven't seen it. But I just want to share with the board, whatever is passed, whether it's Director's Wright's proposal or it's staff's proposal, we got to have as much as possible accurate bids amounts, because once it's set in stone, it's set in stone. And for these dollars are really just these dollars. And so and that's more just for information for every member of the board. That's
Where did these numbers come from?
that would be a question. This is not the staff recommended proposal. This is
Understand that.
direct right.
Well, for the ballpark, for the ball fields, we've gotten an estimate from Parks, and those numbers, the million that I'm asking to be allocated for that will get us started there, and then we want to try to leverage that and raise some private dollars to go along with that, but we need something to get started with refurbishing those fields.
Well, there were a number of items on here.
Some of those weren't changed. The senior center, we know, is going to cost more than $2 million. And so we asked for another $1 million to be added to that so that we can explore the possibilities of acquiring the building that we initially started out trying to get about 3 years ago. But we want to at least have an allocation of funds that would make that even feasible.
The Real-Time Crime Information Center, it shows $1 million. Is that what we need to complete that
That's the
Real-Time
mayor's
Crime Center?
deal. I don't know what that would take. I think Mayor Scott said he put that was what you said we needed.
Yes.
That was on the original.
Yeah, that was on the original. And so essentially, the Real-Time Crime Center, there's been members of the Little Rock Police Department that have been looking heavily into it. I believe also, let me put it in context. This is our version of a Real-Time Crime Center. So based on some things that our department has looked into, we could justify having a Real-Time Crime Center with a budget anywhere from $500,000. And when I say the budget, that's not including any personnel. That's really just the technology. And we have to understand too, once you purchase technology, you then have ongoing expenses going forward, just operational expenses.
Maintenance, et cetera.
Maintenance. So from that standpoint, to really do, our capital expenditures for this type of technology, it could be anywhere from $500,000 to $1.5 million. When staff was looking into the proposal, because we were still in some conversations about SEES funds. As you all know, members of the city board voted to start the first phase of SEES funds to start this process. So that's, I believe, was Mr. Moore, what, $212,000? So that's the first phase of funding. Whenever we pass ARPA, we allotted, and again, in the unfinalized proposal, we had $1 million. Staff was going to come back with $1.3 million, and the reason why we were going to we saw the support from the city board, and just instead of tapping the SEES funds and allowing that delta of $300,000 to be utilized for some other LRPD resources, we were going to increase, when we brought it back to you, that $1 million number to $1.3 million. And so now, based on the recommendation from LRPD leadership, we would have met that 1.5 versus what was originally looked at, just wanting to get feedback, would have been 1.3, and we would have got the $200,000 from the SEES fund. So again, I say that all to say is staff is still listening to board members. Clearly, we're going to do whatever the will of the board in regards to whether it's Director Wright, and we support many of the additions that Director Wright has made. I want to make sure that's clear. But we have to balance understanding not only Director Wright's things that she supports, but things that the 9 other board members support, balancing that with getting staff recommendations on how much things may cost. Because what we don't want to do is get in a situation for whatever the item is when it comes down to bid, things are exorbitantly higher, and if we don't have the funding from additional funds, and we're not able to be successful. And so we're trying to be as fiscally responsible as from understanding that, but also meeting the needs of the members of the board. So again, the commentary from me right now is what we would like to do is always just give us a little bit more time. Clearly, we share support for many of the things that Director Wright has added, but there's a lot of balancing act, and what I don't want to happen is, particularly as we're having these public meetings, is that we make some promises that we can't keep. And so That's why if you're sensing any caution, that's the caution that you give. Again, that caution does not mean we're not supportive, very supportive of the things that Director Wright is sharing, but we just know on the back end, there are 9 other city directors that are calling staff about different things that they're hearing from their constituents. That's it.
Thank you.
Director Peck.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to clarify when Director Wright was talking about some of the changes, and she was referring to fire apparatus, but it's improvements to LRFD facilities, the firehouses. That's all. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Now we will go to Director Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question. I don't know if it's for you or Bruce, but 2 questions and 1 comment. And Director Wyrick mentioned the second portion, and you have too. But do we have a timeline on when we might bring forward the second portion?
Again, to answer that question, when we originally came to the city board, we wanted to initially come to you with 12 million. And based on the feedback that we received, you all recall, go back in time, before we even presented a actual number, we took time to listen to all. Director Cox came and shared what things could be used for. Mr. Moore took a list of all the things that you all desired. From that list, we came back with 12 million and said, hey, this isn't final, but based on the feedback that we received, encompassing as many things as possible, here's a look at this. You all agreed to say many of the things that you asked for were there, but some things weren't. And we said we want to continue to take feedback and then bring it back. So the point of me saying that is there hasn't been a final proposal for you all to vote on. So it's still 0 until we bring it back. And so based on the feedback is that we were planning to get additional information from staff and come back to you with a proposal with everything expended, the entire 18 million, to try to get as much of what you all wanted as possible. And so again, I think with Director Wright, she's added some additional things that, because there was extra money with the 6 million, we could have done those things, but we were trying to just listen to everyone. So I think staff can build on the framework that Director Wright has built upon, the existing framework. And I think there's ways to get everyone's desire, not 100%, but as much as possible, so everyone can see some impact in their individual wards. And that's the goal, clearly adhering to the ARPA guidelines and federal guidelines. So to answer your question, there's no final proposal, and so until we bring back a final proposal from a staff standpoint, and what staff was working to do is to take additional feedback and come back to you with 18 million, everything expended. And I think we can build upon the framework from Director Wright that was built upon the existing framework.
And Mr. Mayor, thank you. I mean, my question is mainly if we're looking at 6 months, 8 months from now, or if we're looking at in the next couple of months to deal with the remaining. And it's my sense from what you said that it would be closer to the next couple of months.
Or sooner, but actually sooner.
Okay.
But there are a lot of other things that are in play that, you know, there's other things I think the board are aware of, other things that are in play. But I think we could easily come back by the end of the month. So next couple of weeks. I mean, it's just a situation of us looking to some other things and some other external forces that are going on, I think the board's aware of. And so that's where we are. We're working with deliberate haste. So this is not a 6-month thing. This is, I would say, anywhere from 14 days to 30 days, if not.
And I appreciate that. That's helpful in my thought process. My second question before the comment is there FEMA money that we can get for the types of projects that Director Wyrick and Director Wright are talking about?
We have the answer is there FEMA money available? Yes. We have to make sure that the FEMA money available meets the needs of some of the things that we've seen. And so that's one of the things that we're going to be working on, particularly like at the end of the day, some of these properties just that we're going to either have to, you know, either FEMA can do it, or if the city there are certain things from a city perspective, we have to make some strategic decisions on what we do next. And historically, that may have happened before, may have been years ago. Director Wright shared with me some things, but that's a city board decision that we would have to bring forward, which comes with a dollar amount. And I think that's something that the city board may be willing to do, but we have to do that, do that judiciously, because every situation is different. And so we just need to figure that out. But staff is looking, we got a meeting scheduled with some of the folks who has shared those concerns and to figure out with FEMA. And then, but it's gonna take, I think when you're dealing with FEMA on that level, that's not a 2-week solution. It takes time. And so hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you. And then my comment is, even though I've worked on the food desert issue for a long time, I have not been very successful. And the answers I would have given you 6 years ago on how to solve that have changed dramatically to solutions that people are coming up with today. And even since last week, I've had the opportunity to have a number of meetings with people who have successfully opened grocery stores in urban areas like ours, all different kinds of models. And knowing that we may come back with the second portion with suggestions for that, I would like to speak in favor of putting some money in there for food deserts just based on what I've learned. I appreciate so much how hard Director Wright has worked on this new proposal. I've learned how important a match is for some of these opportunities, and some of the people who have been most successful in New Orleans and other cities in opening grocery stores where there were none. So, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor?
Director Wright?
Yes, this may be for the city attorney. So are we adding M1 to the agenda?
No, not yet.
So what do we have to do to get it added?
A motion will be made on Tuesday night to add it to the agenda as a modification, and then it will need the number of votes. If it gets the number of votes, it's added, essentially.
Okay. Well, I would like to see it added, and it can either be voted up or down, but I would like to see it added. Some of the things that I've been talking about, and the seniors have been waiting a long time, and I think we need to move forward. And I respect the fact that staff is looking at some things, but we've had a number of discussions in the past, and then we get the same proposal back. And I want to move forward with M1 resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Wright. Director Miller?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of comments, observations. I'm certainly supportive of the downtown master plan as it's proposed in this modification, but I certainly want the master plan to take into consideration how to address our homeless residents. I mean, there is, every city that I go into, large urban cities, they always have homeless issues to try to deal with. The homeless population likes to be downtown. That's where they want to gather. And certainly this master plan needs to address that in some type of way. So I'm hopeful that it will, because I think any master plan for downtown has to have that consideration in it, sure. As it relates to food deserts, certainly, and I know the staff is listening because what you explained, Mayor, about listening to all the things we're proposing and trying to put something together and looking at that. I'm certainly supportive of Director Webb and looking at that. As you know, and we've had these discussions, Mayor, about some of the areas and neighborhoods in Ward 1 that seem to be on the brink of maybe losing a grocery store. So I'm extremely interested in solutions to that, and grocery stores have popped up in other areas. I think that's great. I attended a presentation Saturday with the Coalition of Little Rock Neighborhoods that Chief Haskins, I guess interim, soon to be gone, Chief Haskins presented to us, and it was very educational. And the people there attending that, I think, learned a lot. I dare say I learned some things. So I would suggest somewhere in the future, maybe not at this upcoming board meeting, that maybe Interim Chief Helton could come and make a presentation on the update of where we are with the CNN report. Because I think it would be extremely, again, educational for the rest of the board to hear what I heard Saturday. I think it's great. And then finally, and I don't know where this is, I would just love to be educated, maybe, and I don't know if this comes from the city manager's staff, with Emily and her intergovernmental connections, but if Pulaski County has ARPA money, I'd love to know how they're doing. Not that we can control any of that, but I don't know if any of that money is coming into Little Rock or if it's all out in the county. I'd just love to know how much they're getting, how they're implementing it, just from an educational standpoint. Hopefully we're not missing any opportunity to partner with them in any kind of way. But I'd love to hear a presentation on something like that.
Sure, that may take a little long. I do believe that they received somewhere around $70 to $80 million total, just like we received $36 million total. I do know County Judge Hyde and I have monthly meetings. There's some opportunities to potentially work with the county on some homelessness projects. And so there's some constant communication between city staff and the county judge staff. There's nothing final just yet, but there is communication, particularly on homelessness. And so to the extent of the information that we can receive as far as concrete details, we'll try to get you a report emailed out to the city board in regards to that. But to answer your direct question, they receive, I believe it's $78 million, but somewhere between 70 to 80 million is what they were able to receive as a county, just like as a city. I believe they got the most of any county in the state, just like we got the most of any city in the state from that standpoint. But we'll get you as much information to share informationally to the city board. Secondly, you agree, of course, we agree with food deserts. That was part of the original proposal. And so, again, it's just a matter of figuring out which way the board wants to go. The city Office of Executive Administration, we support the tenets of Director Wright's proposal. I think it just to keep, again, we want to be very helpful to the members of the city board on just understanding cost estimates for many different things. And so that's just want to make sure, but yes, we agree on food deserts. It was part of the original proposal. In regards to the master plan, city staff, because of ARPA rules, will have to be in control of that procurement process. So those dollars won't go directly to the downtown partnership on that process. Clearly, we're going to work in concert with them as we kind of build that RFQ. We'll make sure homelessness is involved. And also, in speaking with the planning director, there are a lot of other things that have to be involved to ensure it's a comprehensive master plan when it comes to zoning, when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to homelessness, external forces, so that it'll be as comprehensive as possible. Thank you. Director Compuris. Director Wright, is your hand up? Director Wright, is your hand still up? Oh, okay. Just want to make sure. Okay. Director Compuris.
Well, from the time I put my hand up to now, there's 10 different things that happened. First of all, Doris, I think what you put forward answers a lot of the things we need. The firemen have facilities that are not substandard. They're not fit for people to stay in, if the chief is to believe, and I believe him. We have to start doing something from our community centers. You've got, as Gary Smith and I went around there, a great backbone, and if we get it started, I think we can raise a lot of money to get it up to where it should be. We have to get something for our senior citizens. This building is great, but you can take that $3 million and add on to it in different ways and make it not a great facility, but a superb facility. If you look downtown, you've got to have a master plan. And the mayor and I were at a dinner, a week ago,
Yes, sir.
where the people from Birmingham were in and talking about that's what facilitated what's going on right now. I'll send you an article about San Francisco, about what's happened there because they didn't have a master plan and what's happened during the pandemic. And if we don't start making some changes, then we're not going to have a downtown. Lastly, well, not lastly, if you look at homelessness, Antoine and BJ and I were at a banquet for the retiring superintendent, Mike Poore. Barry Hyde was there, and if we're going to have people come, I would love for him to come and talk to us about his plan that he discussed with us about building like they did where you went and saw Kathy in Austin, a homeless place that you have a home, but you have common showers, he said, common eating places, so you have to get out and you have to do things.
I think they're common kitchens, not common showers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excuse me, thanks for correcting me. So if we're going to invite people, that may be one of those things we need to start learning about on the front end rather than the back end. But I would hope that we discuss this, take what Doris put out, make any modifications we want to make. But I think it provides us with a starting point of the things that we've been talking about for months now. And hopefully we can get going on this.
Let me see, since the mayor's out here, I guess I'll call on myself. I don't see anybody else with their hands up, and I think I'm the last one. So, Bruce, and one of the things that strikes me talking about the drainage issues, and I know we've got them, and I had this conversation with a lot of folks in my area of town, because we've had some water issues, is the difference in having water in your yard and water in your house or in your business, because those are two very distinct differences. And so what I would ask is for Director Wright and Director Wyrick to get those locations of these drainage issues to our public works, so we can all have a report on these, where the floodplain lies. I know through development, as many of the new neighborhoods have gone in, West Little Rock is, our design standards are for a certain year flood. And then, so when these things are occurring, is it exceeding that design standard? And because when you exceed a design standard, then you're trying to, like I said, you've got it's a bigger picture view than just a certain location, because you don't want to fix something in one place and push the flooding issue downstream or upstream on somebody else. So sometimes it's a much bigger picture that might be possibly addressed better through our bond issue and some citywide funding, because it may strand across wards. But I'd like a little more detail on that. I know that through the last sales tax and bond issue, we've addressed the majority of the drainage issues in Ward 5, where we've had water getting into houses or inundating houses. So we're in much better shape, and we've actually been able, with future development, to fix a lot of water issues that were there that we've alleviated. So sometimes development actually works to our benefit to do this. My thoughts on the holdback, and the only caution I would add to the board is that this is one-time money. It's also intended for us to deal with and continue to deal with COVID. I believe it's more in an endemic stage, not in a pandemic stage, but being a seasonal, what's turned out it's probably going to be more seasonally driven. We still got a fall and winter to come up, and we don't want to, we want to keep some powder dry just in case we have any COVID type mitigations we need to do at the city level. So I would caution us not to spend all of that money and to definitely have some holdback. And I think that was where Bruce and the mayor were coming from. So I think we need to tread cautiously. Now, what that number is it, 1 million, 2 million, what do we need? I think we have a history of looking at what we've done. We've already made a lot of investments where COVID mitigation is related that we can roll back out. So maybe going forward, it's not as big of an issue because we've already figured out how to deal with it. But those are just kind of my thoughts. I'm very supportive of this. One of the big issues that's been talked about with Director Wyrick is for West Little Rock is a firehouse, but having some discussions with our firefighters. I'm going to have coffee or lunch with Chief Hubbard next week to discuss some immediate needs that I don't think are solved by a $6 or $8 million firehouse. We need something more quickly, but even if we could come up with a fire engine and a firehouse, we've still got to staff it with, just to put a single engine company into a firehouse, that's 12 firefighters. We're still short fire. It's a much longer process than this money, I think, can address from my standpoint in my ward. So I'm very supportive. We've got operations downtown. We've made an investment from my company's standpoint and into moving essentially our headquarters from our company on Roosevelt to downtown core. And I can tell you, being downtown, it's been disproportionately impacted where the homeless are concerned, or just general business, because not as many workers have come downtown. We've had the state pull several hundred, maybe 1,000 workers out of the downtown corridor over to Riverdale, which has had a huge impact. So it's been compounded by the pandemic. But so I'm very supportive of doing that and trying to make sure we're making the biggest impact for the city as a whole. And the senior center, I think that gets used by that to me is a citywide project, even though it's probably going to land in Director Wright's ward. It's pretty centrally located, as you like to call West Central Little Rock. So I think it works. And me having grown up learning how to play baseball at what used to be the Optimist Club, I definitely want to see those ball fields fixed. So I definitely think we ought to put this on the agenda for Tuesday night. But that's just kind of my short-term thoughts on it going forward. And with Public Works, I think, them looking at floodplain, there's some FEMA funds for remediating flood-prone areas also through the Federal Flood Insurance Fund as well. So we may have some impacts there, but that'll all be determined if it's already a predetermined floodplain. We may just have some issues with areas that aren't in a floodplain getting water on them because we've not addressed some downstream stuff. Thank you.
Director Adcock?
Yes, mine is on number 4, 5, and 9.
All right. And just to kind of put a summation, staff, as we shared, has been working to do bring back a proposal to the city board for consideration. Director Wright and I have had some sidebar conversation, and so there may or may not be, we're going to have some sidebar conversations after tonight. So there may be another proposal that again comes back, comes back with some additions that mirrors everything that we've all discussed, we all support, we all agree with. So please be on the lookout for that. Otherwise, you'll see other options. So thank you so much for everyone's feedback. All right, Director Adcock, you said 4, 5, and 9?
4, 5 to start with.
I'm sorry, Director Wright, you put your hand up?
Yeah, but it's on another item.
Another item, okay. I just want to make sure we were concluded on this one.
Mayor, did you want to give a brief background on M2 and 3 so that we can move to the consent agenda? I mean, Mr.
I think if everyone's seen M2 and 3, do we agree to move that to the consent agenda?
I have no objection.
All right, so we'll move, well, actually, can we do that since we're not in a meeting?
Yeah, that's, you can say that, and the final agenda will have it there. You can't vote, but you.
Okay. Okay.
M1, it could be on the consent agenda, it could be a separate item depending on how the motion's made and what the vote is.
Yeah, so Director Wright, we'll, as what we discussed, we'll figure that out. Where everyone's on one accord. So thank you, Director Wright. Thank you, members of the board. All right. 4, 5, and 9. I believe that's, Director Honeywell?
Mr. Honeywell, with the 2 that we approved last week, or 3, we are now looking at paying out $500,000 to get the trimmings and the cuttings of our properties. I was told by a person that we are now cutting and trimming lots of University Avenue, particularly in southwest Little Rock. Is that true?
That is correct.
So is the state giving us money for doing that? Because they have always taken care of that.
South University was turned over to the city of Little Rock over a year ago.
And so is that why we're now having to pay out $500,000 to cut our property, because now we're cutting the state property?
That is now city property. That is why we are maintaining that particular stretch of road.
I'm sorry.
It's no longer state property, it is city
Pull your
property.
microphone up, please.
It is no longer state property, it is city property. We own the right-of-way that University Avenue is located in.
Why, how did we acquire it?
That was part of an agreement that was approved by the board. I don't remember the exact date, but probably well over a year ago, as part of the 30 Crossing project, we agreed to take on the ownership of that right-of-way in exchange for work that was being done with the 30 Crossing project.
I would like to see that contract, please, because I don't remember trading that out. And so is that why now we're paying out $500,000 to get someone to cut out of the property?
University is just a small part of areas that we're using contractors to mow.
Well, I know, I've noticed here, lots of it's parks and recreation and everything. Tell me about these companies that we've contracted with. Did we send out an RFQ, RFP?
It was a open bid process through our procurement office. These were actually advertised, these 2 particular contracts were advertised 3 times before we had anyone bid on them. So they were open for anyone to turn in bids to do this work.
Do we check out these companies to find out? I noticed that one of the companies that we okayed last week for close to $1 million, they have 3 employees. So do we check these companies out to make sure that they have the equipment and the staff to cut our properties?
Yes, ma'am, that is part of their bid proposals.
Okay, and you are sure that all these are companies that are open for business today?
Yes, ma'am,
Okay.
and have done work for the city in the past.
At what point do these companies buy city privilege license?
That I don't know. I
Okay.
assume they have to do it annually if they are a business in the city of Little Rock.
Okay, because I know that I had a person call me that 1 or 2 of these do not have active privilege license to do business in the city of Little Rock. So I just had a question about that.
And I'll be happy to follow up with our procurement office who monitors all of that for these bids.
Okay. Can you get us a list for next week of what projects they're going to be cutting?
We've already provided that, I believe, and that should have been provided to y'all the last time we talked about this.
Well, I meant these today.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That was provided.
Okay, I don't recall seeing it, so if you can make sure I get another copy of
Certainly.
it, please. But I think that, we've taken on something and now we're paying out $500,000.
This is the city's effort to try to maintain public right-of-way in a manner and a condition that I think the board and the citizens of the city of Little Rock want those areas to be maintained. We are unable, through our current city staff, to be able to maintain these right-of-ways to that condition. That's why we're going outside, and we budgeted for this in this year's budget to do a contract like this to help assist us in maintaining the public right-of-way in those unmaintained areas in a more up-to-date and continuous fashion.
How long will these contracts good for a year? Or
For a year.
do we plan on then going back to having city employees for these positions next year?
We still have all of our city employees working. We're still mowing with our own staff. We haven't stopped doing mowing with city forces and equipment. This is to help us maintain it more often, all of the stuff that we do across the city. So will we do this contract next year? We'll see how successful it is this year. Will we do as much with the contract and more with our own crews? We'll consider that. It just depends on what those conditions are.
What kind of supervision do these people have from your office?
Actually, our city staff will be monitoring these locations to make sure that they're taken care of as per the contract conditions.
And it's the city staff you already have?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Wright.
The state of Texas
Mr. Moore, do we have the representative from IT, or you can handle?
Here, Tony Cook is here.
Oh, Tony, I didn't see you back there, Tony.
This is going to really expand our opportunities to do business with diverse companies in the sort of IT procurement world. So, Tony?
Sure. Hi, my name is Tony Cook. I'm the Assistant Procurement Manager for the city. So this is like the Texas State IT contract. So this will give us the ability to buy off the IT state contract in Texas. So they have a bigger transaction rate, which will lower our cost, and it will also allow us to buy from more MWBE vendors, and it will also allow us to buy quicker and not to have to go through the bidding process. So these are already set contracts that Dallas, Austin, and San Antonio already use.
So why are we not using the state of Arkansas's cooperative agreement? They have one as well.
No, ma'am, they don't. We have a couple of state contracts already set up for IT, but currently there's only 10 or 15.
So this is strictly IT, but because I know the
Yes.
state does have, because we purchase off of it.
Yes, ma'am, we
They
purchase
don't
a
have
lot.
one for IT.
So we have 10 or 15 IT contracts on the state contract level, but Texas, on the other hand, you're talking about hundreds. So it allows us to purchase at a very high transaction rate and get actually lower cost compared to our own state contracts. So it's actually a really great deal for the city. So the state of Arkansas, the Office of Procurement Services actually uses this contract as well.
Mr. Carpenter, there's nothing untoward with this? I mean, since it's another state that we are doing business with other than our state?
Well, in answering your question, you have to know that I qualify as a son of the Republic of Texas, so I may be biased. But cooperative purchasing agreements are allowed by state statute. There are certain requirements that the entity has to meet. If it meets those, then cities can participate with them and counties and use them. So to the extent that Texas has met that and the state purchasing office has verified that, then yes.
Our state the state of Arkansas's purchasing office has okayed this.
I think that's the group that actually looks at it. I know I don't.
Well, and I'm curious because I was a certified procurement official, and I know about these contracts, and I was just surprised to see Texas here and not Arkansas. Okay. All right. Thank
Director Wright, we've used, for instance, there's the Houston Galveston Cooperative that we've utilized often over the years to buy fire apparatus. So it's a mechanism that the city has used in a variety of ways in the past.
Well, I know about the fire apparatus because we don't build them here. So that one I understood. I just wanted to make sure I'm clear. Thank you.
Mayor, I also had questions on number 9.
Director Adcock?
Yes. Mr. Moore, so this contract here, number 9, will allow us to buy fire trucks and other things under this?
No, ma'am. I just gave that example. There's not, every component that we buy, there's not a cooperative, but the fire truck as example is one. And when we purchase off a cooperative, as Ms. Cook said, they usually they've gone out to bid, and they have a set bid, and any city whose governing body has approved the city to use that cooperative can use it. So before Tony or Randy can go out and try to purchase something off of this cooperative, the governing body of the city has to approve it. So that's the sort of the process in place. But I just gave the example of other cooperatives that we have utilized in the past, and one of them I just remember is the Houston Galveston that Chief Kerr even used when she was here.
Okay, so we bought a fire truck from Texas,
From the
fire apparatus from Texas, and that was when Chief Kerr was here?
We have utilized it often. Not only, I said we probably started it with Chief Kerr, but Chief Summers, it's a mechanism that saves the city money, and you have a more diverse group of vendors that you can potentially utilize. As Tony said, there are 10 to 12 here in Arkansas, and there's hundreds in Texas. So that's going to mean you're going to get a better price because there's stiffer competition.
Okay, so money is one reason we would, and because they have more minority contractors than we do.
That is one
diverse.
advantage, correct?
Okay. Mr. Carpenter, can we do that?
You can purchase off of purchasing agreements. A government cannot make race-conscious decisions for purchases unless it's gone through the process with the diversity study. But, for example, if there's 10 that do a subset of something on a computer, and the lowest price happens to be a minority firm, then the city takes the lowest price and it has a minority firm, which gives an opportunity. What the city can't do is have the 10 people on the list and then pick out only minorities to be the ones that would get city business.
So minority cannot be the sole reason, but minority plus the lowest amount.
In Arkansas, it's supposed to be the lowest responsible and responsive price. So what's going to happen is that the Texas group has gone through, done the bids like Mr. Moore said, and found these are companies that are both responsible and responsive, which is two different things. And then the prices are offered, and then the city can decide to take the price based upon that. There will be potentially other factors that come in. I mean, to kind of give an extreme example, there may be a company in Texarkana, Texas, that's a little bit more than the company in Dallas, Texas, but it's 4 hours closer to Little Rock if there's a problem. So that can be considered.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. That's all on number 9.
Thank you so much. Director Campiris.
Just an update from you or Mr. Moore. one of the projects we passed months ago was Fab 4 and one of the things they were supposed to be doing was, or had the capacity for doing, is cutting and clipping. Can we have a report on how they're doing, or what part of this conundrum of mowing pay, what we are doing with them and what we're doing with our own services?
Yes, we'll get that. I think the contract just was recently signed, so there may not be a lot to report, just FYI. I think it was recently signed, maybe a week or so ago, but we'll get that information.
My hand is back up.
Director Wright.
On item 10, Mr. City Manager, how many street sweepers will this give us? Are we replacing something, or are we adding to? Are we adding to, or or replacing?
John is,
And if we are adding to, how many does this give us now?
I believe it's replacing, but let me go.
Replacing?
We'll get you that information.
Here you come.
Oh, there's-
On item 10, just replacing a street sweeper or adding?
I believe we're replacing a street sweeper. I have to ask Willie that because Fleet is the one that's
Yeah,
doing this.
I'm pretty sure it's replacing.
How many do we have?
I believe we have 8 or 9 total.
Because I still get people ask me, why don't we have a schedule for when the street sweeper is going to come through? And I remember your answer years ago. It didn't make any sense to me, but I remember your answer.
You want me to
Could not.
repeat it?
Yeah.
Okay. With street sweeping, we have the city separated in different sections. And we have a street sweeper start at one end of that section and sweep through all those streets until they get to the end, and then they go back and start over. We don't know how long it's going to take them, depending on how much debris, limbs, leaves, trash. They may go through that particular section the first time in 2 weeks. The next time they do it, it may take them a month to do that section because of the amount, if we have breakdowns, if there's weather issues. So to be able to say, I'm going to be on this street, on this block, on this day, I can't tell you that because we don't know how far they're going to get each day. That's why I can't tell you, when are you going to sweep this street in a residential area. There are arterial streets that we sweep every week, downtown and the major arterials. When you get off into the residential streets and side streets, those are the ones where we have a geographic area that they work in, and when they get it done, they start and keep doing it. And we get anywhere from 5, 6, 7 times a year across the city with that program.
I wanted that restated, because I do get that question
Oh,
periodically.
yeah. That's why I wanted to say it again.
But this is replacing an existing one, is that correct?
We actually had 2 burned, and they were the older sweepers, and we got $126,000 to replace one and $149,000 to replace one. So they cost $270,000 to $300,000 depending on the options you put on them. So we're buying one right now because that's the amount of money we have in the account.
This is replacing one.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you.
Any more questions for items 14 through 20? Director Adcock?
Yes, item 17, I'm sorry. I'd like a presentation on that.
Collins?
While he's coming, Mayor, did someone say that we was having a study done on these houses that are being rented for like overnight and everything? There was one on North Summit that I noticed is actually number 1 on the agenda tonight, and then we've got 2 more here. But someone had mentioned that we was doing a study to see if there was really a need, and if so, what kind of requirements we was going to put in place. Has that been done, and do we have the study back?
Director Collins?
So I'll address the short-term rental ordinance, and yes, there was public meetings held and a ordinance drafted. We had 2 meetings, 2 actually in the public meetings out with the neighborhoods. Maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, it kind of slowed down because of COVID coming in. So decided to pick that back up. And so we went out and met another 2 times out in the public because it'd been a while. So we'd got some initial comments on that. It has went before the Planning Commission this past meeting, and they looked at the draft. We have received comments to make some changes on just the main concerns that they had. It was a broad range of they don't want any allowed in the city. And there's comments that to the other extreme, that they want them allowed in the city, but they don't want any regulations on it whatsoever. That people wanted to see regulations, but they would like to see things like what we would call a owner occupied, to be more than just in the home itself, but maybe within a radius to be considered owner occupied for the call. And we have another meeting scheduled to discuss that at the Planning Commission coming up in July. And at that time, if the Planning Commission chooses to vote to pass it on as an ordinance to the board, that may happen. It may be deferred again for another month, depends on if the commissioners, and then at time we'll present it to the board for consideration from the Planning Commission for the ordinance. So that is the timing that we have right now. The draft ordinance is online underneath the Planning and Development website, and it has a link that you can click on to not only see the draft ordinance to date, but also comments that we've received to date.
We have 2 on the agenda for next week, one on Summit Street and one, I think, on West 15th Street. So should we be looking at these before we have that study to look at what the people want?
Yes, you may. I mean, I think the one is the Summit Street, the one that's setting, that's an
Number
appeal,
1.
I think.
It's number 1, and yes, it's
Yeah, that's the appeal. Because currently what we do is we're treating all of them as a planned development. So it comes before the board as a planned development for all short-term rentals. That's how that is being handled, because it's either a bed and breakfast or it's a short-term rental. So the new proposed ordinance does not eliminate that. Essentially right now it has, if it is a certain type owner occupied, was on the draft now to be proposed to be, go through a conditional use permit, which would be Planning Commission decision, or actually a special use permit, because it needs to be still tied to the entity, the owner of the property, so it doesn't tie to the property forever. So if it changes hands, it goes away. A non-owner occupied, they're not living at the address, is proposed to be a planned development, which would bring it before the board, and we would put that same criteria that says that if the sells the property and they're not, then it would revert back to the residential zoning, whatever the zoning was previously. So these items can be heard. If the board chooses to, that's some discussion with the city manager, maybe in the city attorney, on timing of it. I would anticipate the timing that the ordinance may be before the board, you're looking at one of the meetings in August timeframe for the proposed ordinance from the planning commission to come before the board for a hearing.
Okay, item number 17. Did we not look at this just several months ago and voted no on it? And why are we looking at it again, and have they changed it?
If we could bring up the site sketch, this has not come before the board for a action yet. What it had come before us is we was looking at it, and the verbiage in there, they had presenting a layout that we was not supporting. And so they revised the layout on how things was configured in the front, got comments from the neighborhood association, and then presented it with our support at the planning commission. So in the write-up, you'll see a section that we wasn't supporting it, and then later we're supporting it because of they made changes. Some of the main changes they did was shifting of the driveway to align with the driveway at the, well, where'd you see at the top of the page across the street. They also reconfigured their back driveway coming through. Originally, they had some parking on that back drive that's going back behind the building. And the questions was who's going to park in those spots and service it. We would rather see this shifted down and more parking added in the front of the complex. And then they reconfigured the entrance on the east side of the property coming in to allow for a little bit more stacking before they made a bend and turn, and also a configuration of the bank area. That's that northeast corner.
So this one has 3 drive-throughs on one piece of property that has a bank and 2 restaurants, correct?
That's correct, but you can't necessarily associate all drive-throughs as the same intensity or the use. It depends on the time of day and the operation of that facility. Now, the restaurants, they haven't been chosen yet, but that would depend on their operational hours. And a bank drive-through peak hours is not necessarily the same as a restaurant peak hours. But that is all internal circulation. None of those circulations go directly onto their own separate drive onto our roadways. It is internal and goes out to common drives.
Okay, and right behind this, you have residential.
Yes, and there is a buffer that they're proposing at that location. If you look at the bottom of it, that little green strip is a buffer strip that they're proposing for the development.
Well, over here on Rec Road, what keeps them, instead of going up there and trying to get on baseline traffic, to go back through the neighborhood? That was what the neighborhood's problem was that this just kind of funnels everyone because they don't want to go out on baseline because it's so busy, and they'll be going back into the neighborhoods.
Well, I do understand those concerns. I do not know how many neighborhoods, and I can get that information for the next meeting, are south on Rec Road that would actually be utilizing this facility and going back south. I do see potential for traffic that would leave this development and get on Rec Road, but going back to the north, most definitely to that intersection, depending on the time of day and what the congestion is on the roadways. But I don't know if there would be that much impact to any development south on Rec Road.
Is this the old Sonic drive-in location? The Sonic?
Let me pull up the existing. I remember it being close to that location.
Because that was one problem that they had with the Sonic, was that people would go back into the neighborhoods and cut through there and come out on Guyer Springs Road.
Yeah, this is, it just says it's the vacant drive-in restaurant, so that was the Sonic location. A portion of this site was. It's 2 different tracks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Any more Questions for those items? 21 through 26.
Mayor, I would like that item kept separate, please. Item 17.
Item 17.
Yes, the one we just discussed.
You want to, could you restate that? I couldn't hear you. Could you restate what your request? I couldn't hear you.
To keep it separate.
Yes, ma'am. Anything regarding 21 through 26? Seeing none, anything regarding, well, we know 27 will be,
I think I wanted to make sure I was clear on 22
yes, ma'am.
about this call handling software system. Will that make our response time or to people when they call in better?
Ms. Joanna Green, our 911 director, will speak to that.
Good evening, everyone. The call taking protocol system is designed to help the call taker, to assist and aid the call taker in ascertaining better information in order to relay to the responders. So in this process, there's a scripted interrogation for each type of incident. We're able to ascertain that information, any safety scene safety information, if there are any weapons involved, proper descriptions of any suspects. That information would be relayed immediately to the responders. They will see that information on their MDTs, as well as we can also relay it over the radio to them immediately. It does not, as we're ascertaining that information from the caller, it does not delay any response of the resources.
So this has nothing to do with the number of times 911 rings?
No.
You know, that came up
Yeah, that's
last night.
I think we all know that's a broadband issue that's been an issue. So, but this will help make things more efficient and effective and helps us move further in the future as it relates to 911 systems.
And I wasn't aware it was a broadband issue. I thought it was a personnel issue. We didn't have enough 911 call takers.
I'm sorry, that is an industry issue across the board, across all states.
Not enough call takers.
Correct.
Okay, so that's, because you know that's what.
As it relates to us particularly, we are in the process of increasing our staffing, so we have new call takers starting in our, excuse me, in our training academy next month.
Because that comes up pretty much every meeting I attend, that you've got to let it ring a gazillion times, and then you get off the line and you get back in the queue and all this stuff. Anyway, okay, when I saw call handling software, I was wondering if that would help that, but it doesn't. Okay, thank you.
Yes,
You're welcome.
Seeing no other questions, you got another?
Well, I got one at the end. It's not about the agenda item, no.
We're at the end.
Okay. Mr. Moore, I sent you some information, as I said, about Texarkana and what they were doing to address some issues they were having with some homes being flooded. When can I expect a report on 3013 Walker so that we can move forward with trying to get this issue taken care of? Because this particular household has been suffering for a long, long time. And I sent you what she asked, if it would be feasible for us to do that, I don't know. I just want to know when can I expect some type of report?
Director Wright, I believe you sent that to me Friday, and then sent the Fort Smith things over the weekend, which I saw in the paper. So I have both of them, and we're, as you know, you've been out there many times. I've been out there. Public Works has been out there.
Yeah.
That's where the water flows. And I didn't know she owned the lot next door. I didn't know that. But I don't know if the lot next door is going to get her any relief.
She thinks it will.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, that's, as you've been out there, the water flows right to that area. But anyway, to answer your question, we're going to try to get those reports. The vice mayor asked for that address and for the one from Director Wyrick. So we're working on both of those just to give a summary of what the issue is and what are the possible solutions.
Well, just for my colleague's information, since you said, mentioned that she does own that lot, she would like to know if her house could be moved to that lot. And she feels that would eliminate her problem. And as you know, it's a lot cheaper to move a house than it is to buy one. So,
like I said, that was the first I heard about it Friday afternoon, so we're looking at it.
okay, well, I'd appreciate a report back. I just want her to know that we're moving as expeditiously as possible because we are aware that this is a very uncomfortable situation to live in. And I mean, I've been kind of tossing and turning at night thinking about her situation because I can just imagine snakes and all kind of critters, you know, every time it floods getting in her house and in the garage. And, you know, I just want us to move as fast as possible. Thank you.
Director Hines?
Mayor, I just want to make sure, we were handed resolution addition M4, but I don't think we added it to the consent agenda. We talked about M2 and M3. I just wanted for housekeeping to make sure that we approved putting M4 on the consent agenda. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Director Computers?
Mr. Mayor, when you were out of the room, we were talking about that Antoine and BJ and I were at Mike Poor's Toast and Roast, and Barry Hyde came over to the table and gave us a thumbnail sketch of what he plans to do with the housing. Do you think either you could give us a report sometime or we could invite Judge Hyde to come and give us his vision so that we'll all be working together on this project?
Yes, he's still going through some things. He reached out to me. He wanted to have a meeting here soon, and then we'll, once he has some more finalized, we'll get that done. Any more questions from members of the board? Seeing none, meeting adjourned.